So let's start with the government shutdown. Right now, hundreds of thousands of your constituents here in Arkansas are without their November SNAP benefits while the government is still shut down. What are your thoughts on the two federal judges essentially ordering or saying that it is legally obligatory for the Department of Agriculture to tap into its emergency reserves and to respond today with the intentions of whether they're going to do so? What are your opinions on using the funds, especially after the Department of Ag spokesperson has said the well has run dry and the emergency reserves are not an option?
Yeah. Well, I think the easiest way we could avoid hardships for all Arkansas families is just to reopen the government. And for the Democrats to supply the votes that they haven't for the last month to open the government, then we wouldn't have to worry about food stamp benefits or pay for our troops or pay for our federal employees. Now, late Friday night, a couple federal judges in other states held that the Department of Agriculture should use certain monies to fund the food stamp program for this month. President Trump has said if that's upheld on appeal and that it's deemed lawful, then he would be happy to do so, and I would support that as well. But I think it gets to the underlying point that there's only so much legal authority and there's only so much contingency funding in each department to cover these necessities. And President Trump's point, and my point all along, has been we don't have to worry about these legal debates about authorities or the financial situation of each department if we simply fund the government. Then we can pay the troops, we can fund food stamps, we can pay federal employees, we can make sure the air traffic control system is working. So I hope this is the week, maybe after the elections tomorrow in Virginia and New Jersey, that the Democrats will come to their senses and supply the votes necessary to open the government.
You have been through a government shutdown before. What words do you have for your constituents who may not be able to feed their families tonight or next week?
I feel very badly for everyone, and I want to make sure that we provide you the support that you need. And the way to do that for all Arkansans who's waiting for some kind of payment from the federal government is to reopen the government. Families who are on food stamps, and we have almost 250,000 of them in Arkansas, are struggling. There are plenty of federal employees who are probably struggling too after missing a second paycheck. You have families who are on free or reduced meals who are probably worried about those funds running dry as well. We've heard from many Arkansans who are in these situations. We want to open the government, and we want to make sure everyone who gets any kind of financial support, whether a paycheck or food stamps or the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutrition Program, gets that money, they can put food on the table, and then we can have any debate that the Democrats in the Senate want to have. If they want to debate immigration, if they want to debate healthcare, we can do so. But I don't think it's appropriate to be holding hostage so many of our families because they want to leverage this moment, as they say, to get more unreasonable demands for additional federal spending.
Would you argue, though, that subsidies for Affordable Care Act are unreasonable?
So what the Democrats did during the COVID era is put these COVID bonuses in place under Joe Biden, which gives subsidies for Obamacare to, frankly, pretty high income earners that have no checks against fraud, that if extended indefinitely would cost $350 billion. The problem with Obamacare is not that the subsidies that the Democrats put in place 4 years ago during the pandemic is going to expire. The problem with it is it's not affordable in the first place, which is ironic because its formal title, the Affordable Care Act, belies the reality because it's not affordable for Arkansas families. And frankly, it's not just those who are on the Obamacare exchanges. It's all Arkansans who, for instance, get their health insurance through their employers because they have to face mandates that Obamacare placed on their employer insurance plans that they may not need. People's health insurance needs are very different when they're in their 20s and single, when they're in their 40s and have a family, when they're 60 and empty nesters. Arkansans should be able to make choices for themselves to get the insurance that suits them as opposed to a one-size-fits-all mandate. That's one of the reasons why we have rising health insurance premiums for everyone, not just for the relatively small population who are on the Obamacare exchanges.
Well, no one would argue with that. Senate GOP leaders, such as Majority Leader Thune, have been proponents of the 60-vote rule to pass bills. Why wouldn't that be an option in this case?
Well, the filibuster goes back to the beginning days of our republic. It's not in the Constitution, but it's directly related to the Senate's constitutional role. The Senate has always been a place to try to find compromise and consensus across our broad continental nation. I supported it when the Democrats were in charge. I support it now as well. So the solution here to the shutdown is not to break centuries of precedent. The solution is simply for the Democrats to agree to open the government, and then we can debate healthcare, we can debate immigration.
Well, what do you think is going to happen? Because they're not budging.
We've begun to hear Democrats who are concerned about the impacts on their constituents. These hardships begin to pile up over time. I commend the Trump administration for its approach. Unlike the Obama administration, 12 years ago, it didn't say shut down national parks. It's done everything it can to try to keep operations going. It has found the money in the Department of Defense with the legal authority to pay our troops. It used some tariff revenue last month to put money into the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutrition Program. If the Court of Appeals upholds these judges' rulings, the Trump administration said it'll put money into the food stamp program. So the Trump administration has done everything they can to minimize the hardships on our families, but unfortunately, over time, the legal authority gets weaker and the funding runs dry. So I think some Democratic senators, based on my conversations with them last week, begin to understand that. I suspect this week it'll be even more real for them. And I do hope that this week we have a solution, not just for a short-term funding bill that is now just 3 weeks out, but hopefully for a couple months that will allow us to pass all of the government funding bills that frankly the Democrats will have more input in. We've passed several of them out of the Senate already with broad bipartisan support, 70, 80 votes. If we just pass those into law, we wouldn't have to worry about a shutdown for any of those departments.
It sounds so simple when you say it. Tell us about this legislation you co-sponsored, the Secure Commercial Driver Licensing Act of 2025, how it might affect Arkansans.
Well, it would make it safer to be on Arkansas's roads to make sure that anyone with a commercial driver's license can read English and understand it. Obviously, our road signs are in English, especially electronic signs that have more complicated messages that may change are in English. Unfortunately, some states are giving out commercial driver's licenses without any regard to the ability to speak English. It would also have the effect of reducing some of the magnet effect, if you will, for illegal immigration by cutting off an avenue for illegal aliens to come to America and get a job here that Americans can take. I think most Arkansans would agree it's just common sense that if you're going to have a driver's license at all, but certainly a commercial driver's license for big trucks, you should be able to read the English on our signs.
Yes, and I've read that you have said they can't read road signs, too many illegal aliens can't speak English. What resources or statistics do you base that statement on?
There's a lot of states like California that have very lax rules for CDLs. It's tracked by the Department of Transportation as well. Obviously, if you get a commercial driver's license in one state, you're free to drive in any other state. Arkansas has a lot of interstate traffic on I-40 and I-30 in particular. So there's, we think, thousands and thousands of potential drivers on our roads that could not speak English and therefore could be a risk to Arkansas's drivers.
We are running out of time, of course, so let's get to the re-election. You have an interesting challenger. What do you believe you know enough about Haley Schaffner to comment on whether she's capable of the duties of a U.S. Senator?
Well, we're just starting our filing period today. We won't know for sure who's going to run next week. I know there's maybe 4 or 5 Democrats who are taking a look at it, and then the primary is in early March. So I'll let the Democrats sort out their primary. I'm pleased to be running on a record of what I think are pretty good times for the people of Arkansas now that President Trump is back in the White House. Republicans are in charge, just like we saw in the first Trump administration when working class wages were rising, jobs were growing, families felt safer and more secure. We've made great strides at securing our border, cutting down on drug trafficking into our country. We've made America respected again in the world. I think that's a record that's strong, and I plan to run on it once the campaign develops next year. But in the meantime, I'm focused on trying to do the people's business, getting the government back open, getting it funded, addressing some of the urgent priorities of Arkansans.
You're the chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. I have to ask, what should Arkansans think about AI?
Well, I think artificial intelligence, like most technologies, like the internet boom in the 1990s, has both promise and peril. I think many Arkansans in the 1990s, like most people around the country, thought the internet was going to be an unalloyed good. And we've come to realize over time that all of the virtues and vices we see in the real world, you can find online as well. So you can find prayer groups online. You can teach your kid how to throw a curveball by tutorials you find online. You can learn about a wide world. But unfortunately, there's people preying on seniors or preying on kids. I think artificial intelligence is similar. We have to be mindful of both the promise and the peril of it. We also have to see it in the context of national security, because communist China certainly wants to beat us in the artificial intelligence race and the quantum computing race, and those are going to be critical realms of competition in the future, and we cannot allow communist China to beat us.
No. Have you had a chance to speak to President Trump lately? In the last week or so?
I have, yeah. I speak to him fairly frequently.
Oh, I thought you did. What was the tenor of his call about the shutdown? What do you get a sense?
As he said, I think he said as recently this weekend in an interview, he wants to open up the government. He doesn't want to pay the ransom the Democrats are demanding over $1 trillion in new spending.
But does he want you to do the 60-vote rule?
We have a disagreement, a different view of opinion on that. That's not uncommon, though, not just with President Trump in this Senate, but presidents and Congresses in general. Again, the filibuster has been part of the Senate's customs and precedents going back over 200 years. I think it's put us in pretty good stead over the years. One reason why we don't have wild swings of legislation the way you see in some European countries where they nationalize entire industries. When socialists take over, they privatize them. When free market parties take over, is that we've had this filibuster in the Senate for over 200 years that requires some degree of bipartisan compromise and regional compromise as well, when you take into account that what we need here in the Mid-South may be different than what the Pacific Northwest or New England needs, irrespective of party views.
But so you don't think it's applicable to this shutdown?
I think, well, you either have the 60-vote threshold for legislation or you don't have it. I don't think you can carve out this or that legislation. The Democrats tried to do that in 2022 when they tried to impose their radical election law on the entire country. All Republicans opposed it then because, again, if it applies to an election law or a government funding bill, it's going to apply to gun control laws or climate change laws or what have you. And I don't think that would be good for the people of Arkansas. I think we need a bit more stability in the government, and we need the ability, again, if we're going to have big sweeping changes in our country, to make sure that they're durable and that they have widespread support.
You're going to file today?
Later today.
Okay.
And then back to Washington. We have votes.
Yes. And you think it may come to an end soon?
I do. I hope so.
Oh, I hope so too. Even if it takes Democrats, just.
I think the most, to me.
It's a clean bill, right?
To me, yeah, it is clean. Unfortunately, we're just down to 3 weeks of it now. Yeah. So I think the more likely course of action, if we get compromised with the Democrats, is to take up the House bill that would expire on November 21, modify that date to probably sometime in the new year, and then add to it some of the bills that we've already passed. So we've already passed the agriculture appropriations bill. Yes. We've already passed the appropriations bill for the Veterans Affairs, a couple others. We can add to that. We can send that to the House. So we, one, get a longer time to pass all these bills.
Yes, because 3 weeks.
But two, we get a head start on passing some of them as well.
Got it.
And then probably as a part of that kind of deal, you'd also have the commitment by Republicans that we would then start bringing up the other legislative bills. So the defense funding bill and the funding bill for transportation and housing, the funding bill for health and human services. Yeah, and again, Democrats have had input into those bills. They come out of committee typically unanimous or with just 2 or 3 votes against them. So Democrats have a say in this process. I think in the end, they didn't really shut down the government last month because of Obamacare. They shut down the government because their radical left wing is still angry that people from Arkansas elected Donald Trump. That's what we hear. And that's what you see when they go on, left-wing platforms, is that they're just angry that President Trump is president and Republicans are in charge. And they look back to what happened in March when Chuck Schumer and a handful of Democrats voted for a funding bill through September and the kind of vitriol that they endured from their own voters.